The best time to plant the seeds is during cool weather. Advisors at the University of Illinois Extension say the best planting temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. Lettuce seeds are small, so do not place them too deep in the ground. If you plant some seeds every week or two, you will have harvests ready to eat one after another. You can use a seed tray to start the seeds indoors. The container should be deep enough to hold at least 3 centimeters of soil. There should be about 1 centimeter of space between the soil and the top of the container. The container should have holes in the bottom so extra water can flow out. Drop the seeds over the surface and cover them lightly with soil. If the soil is not already a little wet, give it some water, but not too much. You do not want to drown the seeds. Next, cover the seed tray with paper. Remove the paper when the seedlings have grown up far enough to touch it. You can transplant the seedlings into the garden when they are about 2 to 3 centimeters tall. Do this when the weather is not too hot and not too cold. Take out as much of the soil as you can with the seedlings. Plant them in the ground in a hole that is bigger than the lettuce roots. Keep the plants watered, but not too heavily. Harvest leaf lettuces when the leaves are big enough to eat. Pull the leaves from the outside of the planting so the inside leaves will keep growing. Or you can cut off the whole plant. Leave about 2 or 3 centimeters above the ground so the plant will regrow. Cut off head lettuces at ground level. Lettuce is best when served fresh. Store the remainder in the refrigerator in a plastic bag. It will last a few days and sometimes longer. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Transcripts and podcasts of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also comment on our reports, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English. Special English Agriculture Report. Farmers know that if you reduce harmful insects and diseases in your crops, you have a chance for a better harvest. Today, many farmers and experts praise Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. IPM is a series of choices and methods to control insects, diseases, and fungi. The program provides current information on how pests live and act in the environment. A number of non-governmental and other organizations in many countries provide education in IPM. Farmers can get information meant for the needs of their own land. They can learn to recognize possible problems and how to plan crops to help prevent failures. Paul Jepson heads the Integrated Plant Protection Center at Oregon State University. He says farmers who have attended field schools in Asia and Africa have increased the use of IPM. And he says this has cut pesticide use. James Frederick is an IPM expert with Clemson University's PD Research and Educational Center in South Carolina. He says one basic IPM method is to plant as early in the season as possible so that most of the crop will be in by the time a disease or pest arrives. Not all insects are pests. Some are helpful. IPM programs help farmers learn to identify different kinds. Another IPM method is rotating crops. Farmers do not plant the same crop season after season in the same soil. Instead, they may plant corn one season, soybeans the next, then corn again. Brenda Vandermeer is also with Clemson University. She says farmers should not endlessly work the same soil without putting back some organic matter. James Frederick says farmers need information about what crops are best to plant. He says that sometimes disease-resistant crops will reduce harvests. He said a last choice would be chemical control. But he suggests using management methods first. Another possible method of pest control is using genetically modified plants. They have had their genes changed to contain a special characteristic, like resistance to certain insects. Brenda Vandermeer says she believes improvements in plants can be very helpful. She noted the example of genetic engineering that makes rice more nutritious by producing beta-carotene. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read and download our programs at voaspecialenglish.com.
Report. George Ballas of Houston, Texas, lived a long life. He was a businessman and property developer, a university lecturer and author, a dancer and dance studio owner whose son Corky and grandson Mark followed in his footsteps into the dance world. And Mr. Ballas was the inventor of the weed eater. The man who found an easier way for people to cut grass and weeds died in Houston on June 25th. He was 85 years old. George Ballas was born in Louisiana. He joined the military at 17. He served in World War II and the Korean War. After the military, he became a dance teacher and executive in the dance school industry. In the 1950s, he built a dance studio of his own in Houston. People called it the biggest in the world. Dance City, USA had 120 teachers. Mr. Ballas sold the studio in 1964. By the early 70s, he was on to the next big thing. The idea had come to him at a car wash. He watched the needle-like bristles of the brushes as they went round and round against his car. Could a similar idea be used to cut grass in places out of reach of someone pushing a lawnmower? To find out, he placed lengths of fishing line through holes in a tin can. He attached the can to the spinning part of a motorized grass edger. The result? A revolution for millions of people who cut grass for a living or just to keep their neighbors happy. George Ballas became known as the Weed King. And he once told the Houston Chronicle, "A weed eater comes along once in a lifetime." His invention grew into a company which he later sold. Today, his idea lives on in a new generation of string trimmers and edgers that people often call weed whackers. The noise may not be the nicest, but neither is a loud mower. Trimmers work well in corners and along walls and fences. They also avoid the use of chemicals and the labor of pulling weeds by hand. Of course, in the wrong hands, a weed whacker can do damage, like any other power tool. The high-speed cutting line can whack pieces out of trees, wood fences, stone surfaces, or bird baths. In 1952, George Ballas married Maria Luisa Mirolanda, a flamenco dancer and film actress. They were together for 59 years until his death. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. You can find Voice of America's daily news and information service for people learning English at voaspecialenglish.com. Culture Report. 10 years ago, David Masika bought a cotton mill in Eastern Province, Kenya. Mekueni Ginneries was operating with technology from the 1960s. It produced only 200 kilos of cotton in its first